Hello and welcome to China Focus. I'm Shelley Zhang. Now, China released official statistics about its wealth gap on Friday for the first time since 2005. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, China's Gini coefficient, which measures income distribution, was 0.474 in 2012. Now, if those numbers are accurate, that means that China's wealth gap is only slightly higher than the U.S.'s wealth gap. But are the numbers accurate? And why has China not released those numbers for 8 years? Here today to talk about that, we have Chen Zhifei and Jason Ma. So let's start talking about, just off with what the Gini coefficient is. So it's a scale from 0 to 1, and 0 means...
0 means that it's purely egalitarian society. Yeah. And if it reaches level of 1, it means it's all over the place. It's most lopsided in the income distribution. If you look at how it is captured, how it's computed, it's based on the Lorentz curve. Basically, it's a wealth distribution frequency table for a certain percentage of population, how much the wealth they occupy from society. So if you do this for each category of income or population group, you will get a frequency table, which is nonlinear. And the nonlinear curve would form an
easy
area.
To understand.
Well, that's right. It's a pretty complicated economic kind of thing.
You have to calculate using integral the area between the curve and the 45-degree line, which is the perfect distribution of wealth. And the larger the area, the higher the income misallocation or imbalances. So and China is it's getting closer to 1. That means it's a signal which is yelling dangerous.
Okay, let me give you. I have a few numbers here for different countries. Like Sweden's Gini coefficient is 0.25, so that's pretty good, right?
That was China. What China was like 30 years ago when we were born.
Right. Really?
Everybody was poor.
Okay, everybody was poor. So okay, it's more equally poor. So South Africa is 0.63, so that's pretty high.
Right.
Now, so the U.S. has 0.467, and that's only slightly lower than 0.474, which is what the National Bureau of Statistics says.
Don't tell that to those people who are occupying Wall Street, because they don't like it.
Generally speaking, I think different country, due to culture, they have different reaction to the numbers. But overall, people believe anything below 0.4 probably is the ideal society. Above 0.4 is something you to work on.
So 0.4 is kind of like a lot of people mention that it's a number where
what? It's a threshold number that if you go beyond that, you have to watch out. If you dip below it, you're fine. You don't need to worry about it. And note that it's really interesting. As we know, actually, this is the first time China publicized Gini coefficient since 2001. So in other words, in the last 12 years, this is the first time we heard anything about Gini coefficient from the Chinese government.
Version.
I thought they had something in 2005 that wasn't official when they...
None of it is official.
I mean, but at the end of last year, they do have a research organization in a university called
Southwestern University of Finance and Economics.
Right, and that gave a number. They said Chinese Gini index is about 0.61, which is about the same level as South Africa, which put China into the highest kind of uneven
That's
country.
Quite a difference between 0.474 and 0.61.
Well, if you don't believe this one university research, then you can check out the research done by China's internal think tank, which is affiliated to China's State Council. They have a research institute. They did a research that is only circulated within the top echelon, which found China's Gini coefficient passed the dangerous line 0.6 5 years back. That's probably the most serious we have seen so far. And there was also one independent study done by an economist based in the U.S. at Texas A&M University. Professor Gan Li did a study in Chinese coefficient. It's very recent. He found the coefficient is 0.6. So all the results point 0.6 when you have some kind of established methodology to back it up. But this new number came from nowhere, and it's very close to the number they published last time in 2001. In other words, the government is trying to convince people in the last 12 years, even though we had a go-go economy, even though we joined WTO, even though we saw so much that have happened in China that really made people think about income misdistribution, the level of Gini coefficient stay the same.
Well, like they're saying, they actually say that it's actually lowered.
Right,
they
said 2008 they peaked, and then from there on, in the past 4 years, they constantly go down, which is to make everyone begin to laugh on this number. It's just kind of I think some journalists were trying to get a comment from some Chinese economics, like Xu Xiaonian. The guy just saying like, you ask me to give you a serious comment on this fake number, I'm sick or not?
Well, like, let me ask. So the National Bureau of Statistics, they're saying, well, one of the reasons we haven't published in so long is it's hard to determine, how much wealthy people actually own. They're saying that's like the
Well, in a
problem.
country where every cell phone holder would have their number closely watched, their IP address closely monitored, for such a government making such a claim, I think it's just mind-boggling. Right. Of course, they have all the resources. They have so many people devoted to security, public security, and watch over people's behavior. I guess get the wealth data, get income data is very easy. And also, since 2005, China has instituted pretty sophisticated tax collection system, and tax is based on income. How hard it is to get income data from tax.
But we have to admit that in China there is about they said it's about 5 trillion renminbi of green income. It's a huge number, and this
so this is like off the books income, kind of.
Yeah, off the book income, and there is kind of 5 trillion renminbi, and for all of this number kind of income, where kind of people think like 2/3 of them really get to the top 10% of the family. But probably it's very difficult for them to really get it out of this calculation. So I guess that's the reason they really feel like...
Well, if we take your argument as given, starting from there, if that's the truth, that probably means that if they really disclose everything, then the number could be even worse.
Right.
So let's talk about, is there a kind of something that you could look at to see, kind of like the concrete like manifestation of this income gap?
No, I guess it's definitely, we truly believe it should be at least 0.6. Mm-hmm. So it should be at the level where it's the highest in the world. And, but it's kind of worse than that because of the green income in China. It's so huge, 5 trillion. Yeah, which is about close to $1 trillion US dollars.
Yeah, that's true. But I guess at what you're talking about, that is the difficulty, the challenges posed to us when it comes to the calculation part of it. The Lorentz curve is not so easy. For me, it's hard to explain. For those people doing the number crunching, it's even harder. I agree with that. But if you used foreign exchange PPP, purchasing power parity example, it's hard to compare currencies purchasing power. So the economists came up with the idea of Big Mac index. That is, they're looking at the Big Mac's price in each country, and then they back out purchasing power. So in China, okay, let's just take it as a starting point. It's hard, if you believe the official version of the story, it's hard to get wealth data. Okay, let's look at China's ownership of housing data. How many houses are under each person's name? And if you look at this data, you'll find that the pattern fits with our perception very well. That is, actually, there are government officials and the people with the privileges in society who own dozens of houses, not just one,
there
2, 3.
There was just a case recently where in Zhengzhou they busted an official for owning like several dozen houses.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But this is something recently pump up on the web a lot. They call it kind of house uncle, house aunt, and house sister. Basically, they found a lot of people, they own like 20, 30 houses. The value of a house sometimes can go to hundreds of millions.
At the same time, you look at migrant labor, people who are trying to get the citizenship in the city as an urban dweller. They own no houses at all.
Well, you can't buy property.
No, you cannot buy property, and official statistics show that. I'm quoting from the Government Statistics Bureau. Among the migrant labor who are residing in the city temporarily, only up to 0.6% of them have purchased houses. So in sharp contrast to what we're witnessing among the general leadership.
But this other kind of good point is in China, if Chinese government claim they can't really kind of find everyone's wealth, but definitely it's easy for them to find everyone's house ownership, because up to last year, June 2012, they already established a database of everyone's house ownership in 40 big cities. Basically, the 40 big cities should cover majority of the Chinese real estate market. And because all the smaller cities, which the value of a house, the number of kind of corrupted house is not that big. Most of people buying house in Beijing, Shanghai, and those 40 big cities.
Top tier
kind of. So basically now they have a database. They just kind of do a query, like what the people did kind of released on the web. Basically, the information released on the web are some people secretly did the query in the database and find this kind of things. If this is done systematic by Chinese government, immediately we will have all the information. Nobody will argue with you. You will clearly see who has a lot of house, what's the wealth of the house, and everything can be done within a week. So even kind of within Chinese government system, they propose like we forget about kind of release the kind of wealth of each official. You just use your current database, release how many houses each official has. Then that is a way to really get rid of a lot of the corruption in the Chinese economy. But they refuse to do it. I mean, the reason is it's not that they cannot do it. It's just they don't have the determination to do it, or they are not to do it. Because once they start to show that indication in the past 2 months, a lot of kind of officials begin to dump the house into the second-hand house market. That really kind of creates a lot of things. And also another thing is a lot of money begin to escape China. I mean, last year, $1 trillion left China illegally, not from the official channel. They predict 1.5 trillion will left China. So Chinese government is seeing this, like if they push this harder, all the money will just kind of left China. I mean, so basically it's already corrupt to the point where Chinese government just dare not to do it.
So it sounds like they can't really even publish an accurate Gini coefficient, because if they do, it's going to put a lot of things in jeopardy.
Well, if you ignore the gray area, the income with no well-specified sources, you can still give a kind of rough estimate of how, the ballpark number of the Gini coefficient. If you look at the United Nations estimate, up to 300 million Chinese people is living on $2 every day. Such an income level, and 300 million people, which is a big chunk of the population, 1/4 of it. So you can easily back out the Gini coefficient. So that's why all those independently conducted research all point 0.6, if not higher. And if you incorporate the great income area, as pointed out, made by Jason just now, since those great income mostly would go to the higher income level people, then the Gini coefficient could easily in 0.7, which would be, the champion of the world.
Right. I mean, basically, you can see that. I mean, the cheapest labor is in China. Meanwhile, China quickly became almost kind of like the country which had the highest consumption of the luxury product. I mean, Chinese wealth kind of people now replaced Japanese, became the people buying the most luxury stuff in US, and they spend kind of the highest on average amount of money overseas when they travel overseas. So clearly you see two China over there, and that should be reflected.
That's a very good point. We're looking at a country where you have 300 million people living below poverty level. But also, if you look at the consumption of luxury goods, BMWs, those wealthy goods, they are also the top consumers. So such a lopsidedness, imbalance, is not captured in Chinese version of the coefficient.
Okay, well, thank you both for joining us today and talking about this issue. And thank you for watching. For more on this and other issues in China, join us at ntd.tv.